Hi, everyone, and welcome to YDY. I'm Megan, and I am here with a very exciting guest called Cameron, and he's a photographer. He has his own YouTube channel as well, where he talks a little bit about what he's doing, and a really cool agency with, I'm not quite sure who he is because I only have his Instagram name, but Nathan. So shout out to him in KHCF Creative. So I'm really excited to hear a little bit more about that from Cameron. But yeah, hello, Cameron. How are you?
Hi, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you so much for pronouncing it right. So many people get so boggled because it's all such a tight word that there's no spacing in the current logo. That they're not sure. They're like KH Creative. What? So thank you very much for getting that on point.
Oh,
So
sure.
yeah, I run a creative photography agency with my friend Nathan. And we are both master graduates in different professions. I graduated from Edinburgh 2 years ago now in landscape architecture, and he graduated in mechanical and offshore engineering. And I was working at Hong Kong at the time when he had finished and done his grad trip, and we had kind of like caught up and we're just talking about how basically graduating sucks
Tell
and
me about it.
just the madness of the system that we're all kind of like brought into, where it's really about following formal education and kind of just finding a grad job and then settling down and like having all this stability. And it's not that that's ever really a problem, if that's what you want and that's what makes you happy, but we're never really provided with alternatives to really build something for yourself and something that's meaningful to each of us as individuals. And we had this really brief conversation, almost as if it was a joke, that we should do something. And then I guess about a year later, I had finished my master's and we were in London together, and it was 4 a.m. on the night bus, and we were so tired. And I was like, what are we doing? Like, is this what our life is going to be like, working every year just to have like a really quick city break every so often? And then we were like, no, we have to do something and make it work. So from that conversation, it's led us 2 years down the line. We have built up a portfolio and work experience based around our passion, which is photography. And yeah, that's where we are sitting today for sure. So it's been fun.
Yeah, well, I absolutely love your work. I'm so glad that the way that we kind of met is very interesting because it was
Mhm.
through Bumble, the
Yeah, yeah.
networking one, and like I was kind of new to this. I think you were as well.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I saw your work and I was like, oh my gosh, he's such a talented photographer. I would love to know more about him and like see more about kind of where your style comes from, as
Mhm.
well as your kind of inspirations as well in how you started photography, how it all came
Mhm.
about. So if you could just chat through that, that would be really cool.
So where I started, I had got given a film camera when I was in primary school, by my mom, because I went on this trip to the Robert Burns Museum, and she was like, "Oh, take photos of you and your friends," and it was horrendously bad. I've still got some of the shots, and it's just like selfies, with a disposable film
Classic.
camera. And since then, I just kind of played around a wee bit, and in high school, I took photography as part of my sixth year subjects. But after that, when I got to uni, design school was a bit too intense to really have that as a hobby, and I couldn't really find an outlet for it at the time. So I had kind of given up on it for a while, and then I was working in Hong Kong, and the pace and the environment's so stressful, and the drinking culture over there is quite dominant as well. So I was in this really vicious cycle of like drinking and working, and then I felt as if like I've got my camera with me, I might as well like try and network or try and do something different. So I spent my weekend mornings waking up early rather than sleeping in, and just going out and taking pictures of things I thought looked nice. And it got me back into the flow. And I met an amazing network of people over there. And that's when I really found the power of Instagram, where
Hmm.
you can literally message someone and become lifetime friends. And I have done so since then, and it's been the most amazing thing in the world. And I think it's really based around that social network of being able to have unlimited opportunities to meet people and meet very like-minded people and very talented people, to inspire you. And I think that the ethos is really why photography is maybe the most important for me just now, because it's kind of allowed me to benefit a lot socially, both in what I can give socially to people and what I can learn socially from people.
Mm.
Um, so that's at the core, kind of like the ethos of why it's so important.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I think from a graphic design perspective, I mean, if we were to go into freelance, like having a network is so crucial, because from that you can also like recommend your friends to a certain client, because you think actually like I'm doing this kind of style that doesn't really suit what you're asking me to do, but I know this amazing person that's able to do this and I think they'd be perfect for the job. And yeah, like you say, just like these people also inspire you so much.
Yeah.
So since you mentioned networking, how do you go about networking? How does that look?
So when I moved to Glasgow in 2018, at the end of 2018, and we've been here since, and that was a really big gamble because I had never lived in Glasgow. So most of my network was first and foremost in Hong Kong and also in Edinburgh when I studied there. So when I came to Glasgow, it was like starting with a fresh face. I didn't know where to go, who to look for, and who to talk to. So I went to all these really corporate networking events, and uh, I mean they're really really nice people, but just the conversations that you stumble upon and the kind of what you stumble upon isn't sometimes just not applicable.
Mm.
Um, and I think I ended up going in that system thinking, oh, we can get something out of this, and I got really disheartened about networking that way. So I went back to doing what I felt was kind of more natural, which was through Instagram. So through Instagram, I was just literally finding profiles of other photographers and other creatives of what they do, and kind of spending my time looking through their feed and also understanding where their work comes from. And I
Mm.
would just send a very simple message or leave a comment saying, hey, by the way, in Glasgow, would love to collab or create or whatever. And from then, I've just, I don't know, stumbled across really random people that have led to some amazing work so far. Um,
That's really cool.
and I think it's a really dangerous game because we we as lots of young creatives, especially without a lot of work experience, don't have the understanding of how old systems work in terms of business.
Mm.
Um, because we're going in completely fresh face and innovative and like, oh, let's try this. And then their system's very much based off of traditional culture and like just traditional structures and systems that they're so used to. And we're trying to make it as efficient as possible to kind of latch onto that. But yet we should be really focusing on what we're good at and what comes natural,
Yeah, for
whilst being
sure.
respectful to what everyone else does, for sure.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I think, well, it's funny that you mentioned just like how life after graduating sucks. Like, I found it really hard to transition into a new kind of working environment, because the way that you go about university is,
Mhm.
well, there, of course, there's elements that overlap with work life, but it just isn't the same.
Yeah.
Um, I think when you graduate, you are just, like you were saying, in this new kind of realm almost of like trying to figure out, right, how do I do this? And then
Mhm.
I think with networking, that's kind of the same, because at uni you're networking in a different way because you're already with people that you kind of choose to be with, whereas networking in the real world, if you will, harder because you can choose, but you can't really choose at the same time. You just, sometimes you just happen to be the right place at the right time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely like it's learning to it's almost like high school again, where you are just bundled again with people that you might not get along with, people that come from very different backgrounds, and people that just don't have any kind of like akin to you,
Mm.
and having to make it work because you're almost stuck with them, I guess you could say. Um, it's a really weird social navigation, I feel, and the more I done it back then, I feel as if it was just literally high school all over again.
Mhm.
um but I think there's lots of really important things that, as for example us, that where we have had some work experience, it's really important to first of all, like, appreciate that we have had it in the first place and take something from it, but
Mm.
also show everyone else that, you know, the professional world really isn't all gleamy and sparkly like everyone says. Like, there's so many, like, everything's the same as uni. It's like last minute deadlines, things getting rushed, things not getting finished properly. Like, the whole world and system works like this, and we shouldn't beat ourselves up about
Aye.
feeling as if like we're inadequate to be part of it.
Yeah, so we kind of touched on it a little bit, the
Mhm.
struggles and difficulties of life after graduating. But has there been any other struggles that you've gone through, considering freelance life, even just photography itself, working with clients? Do you have anything that definitely stands out as oh yeah, this has been really difficult?
I think the main thing is, I guess you could maybe categorize it as like professionalism, in terms of work. I think the biggest difficulty I have found throughout all of this is really what I like, and being able to do and deliver what a client likes. Um, and that moral compass of, oh, should I be able to allow this work to be issued if I'm not happy with it, or it doesn't suit my taste, or it doesn't follow my style, or what I feel as if my branding is. And I think if I've not spoken to everyone, of course, but a lot of my friends have definitely felt the same way, where I, well, none of us really have the right answer, because some of us decide that it's possible for us to basically just give our work out in order for that financial reimbursement, in order for us to continue with our style. But then some of us are like, well, what's the point of making money and not being able to make a change? Because you're already setting priorities. And I think that moral compass is really the most difficult thing. And I think you find that very early on, as I am still finding all the time. And I think it's just never going to go away
Mm.
because you're trying to balance working in a system that's fueled by money, and that makes everything turn and keeps you afloat yourself. And it's essential because, you know, we all need to eat, we all need to live,
Mm.
and sticking to what you feel is right. So we've not found a perfect balance, and I don't know what the answer is really, but that's definitely a struggle that I found is probably most prominent, um, before and even now. Because I think as budgets maybe get bigger, or more clients come in, you struggle with that even more, because you're like, oh, which one do I choose? Like, is it the money? Is it like, what is it?
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. That
yep.
which leads us very nicely onto the next question, which is what topics do you think people should definitely hear about within the creative industries?
I think this is the most difficult one, because I guess you could call it greed, but I feel as if everything should be tackled, but I know it's impossible. um, and I think I'm trying to make a peace at choosing one thing and just going for it. But I think the overarching thing that I would maybe try and generalize for everyone, that they should encourage, is that the way we treat people, regardless of anything, like race, color, background, what, it just doesn't matter. And I think everything in today's society is wrapped around being able to treat people better, not necessarily equally, and I guess that's controversial in its own sense, but just better. And I think that's more important, because I think it's very easy for us to be so used to attaching labels and descriptions to people as what they are, rather than just being able to see people as the same. And I think if all of our work in the creative scene can do something towards that, then I think that's honestly the most important thing in the world, as an overarching theme. But I also think that it's very difficult for us to feel as if we can make an impact sometimes in terms of scale, because you can very easily see, like, for example, if a celebrity makes a post about this, then people are like, oh yeah, that's great, oh my gosh, yeah, we should treat people better. And I completely appreciate the intention of that, and I think it's great to be able to use your following for that. But in comparison to like a creator from Glasgow like us, or from Scotland, where our following is maybe like 1,000 people on our social media reach, but what we impact is actually like maybe one person at most, it can be very discouraging and very difficult. And I'm not sure what the solution or best way to go about that is, but I guess it's also down to a little bit of privilege and us just wanting to be a bigger impact in the world. But I think if we all just play our part in some form, then we should appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. Like I spoke a little bit about this with another person who's part of this project as well. And she was saying, well, I love her because she always shares people's work, and that encouraged me to share more of other people's work and things that I like. And I think that kind of attitude of lifting people up
Yeah.
is something that we should all carry with us, because like we're all struggling in some shape or form. So if we can try and do not, it's hard to word it, maybe kind of what would you like someone to have done for you while you're trying to get yourself about. And I think for me, one of those things is like, oh, I'd love to share people's work, because it's nice whenever that's happened to me. I'm like, oh, that's nice, like they like my
Yeah.
work, that's cool. So I think for me, one of the ways that I can try and help with that is just by sharing people's work on our platforms that we have. And because I like events, and I'll share events that are happening. And that's another great way to just like meet these people that you see on Instagram, and you're like, oh, they're really cool, like I really like their work. And then you're there and you're like, way, I'm that person on Instagram, whoa. So yeah, it's like it's definitely hard when of course, and rightly so, everyone has their own attitudes to things. But like you say, especially in this time, we need to be better better at helping each other out, and supporting each other in this really weird situation that we're in. Has it impacted you quite a lot, or is it pretty like work is same old same old?
Mostly. I mean, the thing is, I juggle two jobs. So I also work full time as a designer in a design office. So on that side, we've been mostly okay because I've just been working from home. But we've had to halt literally every single photography project we have. So right now is very much like finishing off edits and issues that we can still send out, and then doing, I guess, as much remote working as we can. We don't really have much product clients, so they can't really send us anything to shoot. But I know a lot of friends that have been, and they've been mostly okay. Not the best, but still able to do it. So I think it's a rough time for everyone, and I think sometimes it's just more important to count your chickens and be thankful for what we do have, I guess. That's what we've been trying to ingrain into ourselves, rather than seeing all the negative. Because I think it's really easy to get swallowed up by everything that's going on. Definitely know a lot of friends that have had it a bit rough, and we've been trying to figure out how we can help them. So we've been trying to liaise with some of our work in order for them to get on board. Whereas we're okay just now, so we can just leave that, and they could maybe take over for a bit, just to cover. But it's pretty tough and rough. But I'm hoping that most of us are being able to support at least one or two people to try and get through as much as we can.
Because I think it'll be like a chain otherwise. Like the more that we help each other, the more that other people are going to be like, oh yeah, that's quite a nice thing that they're doing. Maybe I'll
Yeah.
do that too. And like, you know, it goes on and on and on.
Mhm.
So let's hope that continues.
Yeah.
Um, so slightly going off topic onto a more
Mhm.
positive one.
Mhm.
Um, do you want to talk a bit about your creative process, like how you go about making your ideas, like planning a shoot? Um,
Mm. Creative process is a really funny one. I think it comes in all shapes, sizes, and forms. um, and I try and keep it as linear as possible because I think when it's really disorganized, I just get really flustered. So typically, what would happen? We would, if we're either approaching a client or being approached by a client, we will likely have done our background research. So we'll have a wee look at what they do, what their ethos is, what kind of work, what kind of content they already have, and see where we fit in that. In terms of, are we able to produce something better quality, objectively, or is it about being able to deliver a different kind of branding that they're looking for? And I think that is the most difficult part because you're having to ask yourself all these different questions and hypotheticals that you don't really know how they're going to answer. So I think that's the first and foremost, understanding our context, and then second of all, it's being on the shoot. So before I do the shoot, I will always look at I like literally saturate my mind with lots of similar material. So if I'm gonna go shoot with a model, for a portfolio or something, I will literally just be on Pinterest the whole time or Instagram, looking at different forms of how people are standing, how they're moving, um, and like just encapsulating my mind form. And I guess this comes back just from an art perspective, like just understanding art principles and what you're always constantly wrapping in your mind, and then try and bring that to the forefront of when I'm actually on site and in practice and doing what I'm doing. Um, and it's such a fine balance, and I guess everyone has this as well. But when you're on working with a live model, you have to, like, first of all, be able to convey your message through yourself and articulate well. And second of all, be able to understand how they talk and how they're feeling and how comfortable they are and what they're comfortable doing and what they're comfortable posing and how strongly they can pose. And I think that's the most difficult part of the creative process. Being able to try and pull everything together into one single photograph is like, oh my word, it's the biggest stress, but also the biggest fun. Um, and then after that, um, I try and focus mostly on like objective form, um, until it's shot, and then afterwards we will likely have, we'll have a like kind of rough idea of what we want the outlook of the edit to be, but it's not really until it gets loaded up in the computer and I've sat with it for about 10 hours, like, just staring blankly at it, to see kind of what aesthetic it can produce out of it. So it's a long, really long, weird-winded process, and that's like typically what would happen. There's lots of iterations where like we go in completely unprepared, and we're just like, okay, we're here, let's do it. Hi.
yeah, I have a kind of similar thing to that where I'll be on, like, I'll get the brief and then like just break it down and then go into like Pinterest or Instagram and things like that and just see the kind of styles that I like, and I'm like, yeah, that could maybe work with it. But yeah, it's just like, it can be the most frustrating thing trying
Mhm,
to make it work to the brief and to what's being asked,
mhm.
um as well as trying to make sure that you make something that actually looks good as well.
Yeah.
It could answer the brief 100%, but it looks awful. Like,
Yeah.
there's, you just gotta, yeah, try and make it work. But that's why I was really intrigued to ask you that question specifically, because like, I used to do a bit of photography before going into university, and I thought,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm going to leave as a photographer. I ended up coming out as a graphic designer.
Oh wow.
So kind of hearing, it would be great to hear a bit more about like when it comes to projects,
Mhm.
how, I mean, you've kind of talked a little bit about that already, how you like tackle the brief and things like that. But when it comes to actually like composing the photograph, or you need a specific model, things like that, like
Mhm.
how do you go about that?
Because we come from almost like quite a formal background in terms of everything's about process and structure. I think that inherently, like, I can't shake it off. I try my best to, but I can't. Because I would like to have a very free flowing mind of how I kind of bring these things into fruition. Um, and I think it's just ingrained in us to kind of see something, or see something in written form, for example, like in a brief, and automatically assign some form of imagery to it. And that's just down to intuitive aesthetic, and what we think is necessarily what we feel is probably the best aesthetic to go, both in model and edit style, and props and makeup and hair and whatever it is, to that brief and that idea. And I guess we try our best to basically work around that, and compile that into some real photograph. And it's really odd because I've spoken to makeup artists, stylists, etc., that read the same brief and have a completely different understanding or image in their mind. And it's not until one of us can convince the other that it's the right way to go that we are all on the same board. Very rarely we're all like, oh, that's straight away, all of us on the same page. um and I think that's just down to a really intuitive nature for all of us to kind of feel it out, which is very kind of like airy fairy, but I think it's actually the most important thing. Like, without getting too, like, displaced about that, I think being like very aware of how you feel towards something is very important. And I still do that, like, whenever we do edit, although we have a certain aesthetic mind in place to what that should be, end result. Whenever we do crops, or whenever we do like any editing on forms, we still are like a little bit intuitive, and it's a little bit fairy like that. Um, and I guess that doesn't necessarily help anyone else in their process, um, apart from just encouraging them to be able to stick to their guns, I guess. Because I don't know, there's one. Oh, that's going to be a bit of a tangent. There's one thing I really don't like about photography in the Instagram world, is that it's very easy to copy styles and do presets, and, like, follow everyone else's image style. And I don't think that's wrong if you're like wanting to try it out in order to keep refining your own process and your own style, to understand like the mechanics of how to develop that and get to that result. But I think it's really easy to be distracted and pick someone else's style and just go with it, and then whenever they change, you change. And I think it's like a postponement of your own process. You're robbing yourself of your own kind of creative freedom a little bit. And I know that in itself sounds very, pompous in some form, but it's more of, the intention behind what I'm trying to say for a lot of people is being able to be self-aware and, look at yourself first and foremost and what you feel is right, rather than having to just follow someone else's ideas and aesthetics, because you're just postponing your own kind of journey a little bit. And that sounded super zen, I feel as if.
Especially, I think, on Instagram, because everyone is looking to Instagram for inspiration and things like that.
Mhm.
Um, and like, I think it can be quite overwhelming sometimes,
Mhm.
like seeing all the stuff that's there, and you're like, oh gosh, this is so good. And then there's wee me at the back, like, oh, it's so hard.
Mhm.
But I think, well, and that's another reason why I wanted to do You Do You, because I want to try and encourage people. You do you. Like, you're doing
Yeah.
amazing what you're doing yourself. Like, just keep it up. Just embrace your differences, embrace your weird creativity or
Yeah.
the way that you do things, because that's what's going to make you special. That's what is special about you, that you have this way of thinking, that you have this way of like portraying your ideas into photography, illustration, ceramics, things like
Yeah.
this. Yeah, I think that it's only when we start to realize that, I think that's when we're like, okay, like, yeah, I can be myself. Like, they're doing them, like, I can do me too. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's super encouraging to hear from you, and the way that you're thinking and stuff like that. I think that'll encourage a lot of, especially like people that are freelancing, to just be like, okay, I can do this. Like, I believe in myself. If you
Yeah.
can, then I can. So thank you for being so honest and just talking about your experience as well. I like finally wanted to add, I mean, you mentioned style a little bit, um, and there is definitely like, just scrolling through your Instagram, there's definitely like a kind of feel that you want to kind of portray in your work. So did that kind of come naturally? Have you always kind of had that, or has it evolved from the first time that you started photography into where it is now?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think I'm definitely not fully satisfied or there yet, because I can see where I've made mistakes and where I've not quite conveyed what I've wanted as much. But I guess if I'm gonna sum it up in like a bracket of what my work wants to show is regal beauty, and I think that that phrase is something that I've had in a really long run in my life. I think having like regal beauty and very posed and very um, just very able to hold your own. And I think that's something that I've always wanted to convey in life, but not quite fully done it in many things. I think that first and foremost just comes down to like, nurture and nature of me being a human being, of how I am. And I think that's something I like to convey in my work. And I'm trying to learn to do so every single time in the best way in lots of different photographs, whether it's street photography or through a portrait. And I think that's probably the best way to sum it up, if I can. But this is, I think all of us are trying to create work to reflect something of ourselves. Um, and that's the hardest thing. I don't think I ever found out until like maybe like 6 months ago or something. And it's always these like really dark nights where you're like in an editing rut for like 6 hours and you're like, what am I doing? Like, what is this photograph? And I think when you hit that eureka moment, it's almost like, oh my goodness, yes, that's what it is exactly.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess that's been a developed thing over time in order to refine. But at heart, I think all of us kind of have it at the very beginning of whatever we do. And it's just, I guess, just trying to find the moment to, first of all, find out what it is. And then from that point, just keep refining it as much as possible. Um,
Yeah, I think a lot of people can resonate with that, like eureka moment at like 4 in the morning. Like, I think even when it comes to thinking about ideas and things, I'll be going to bed and I'll just have an idea that I think suits something, and I'm like, oh, I need to write that down. Like, I keep a notepad literally next to my bed so that I can write down the ideas that come up. Just because it just happens at the weirdest of times.
yeah.
But I think a lot of people have that same kind of thing. So glad I'm not the only one.
Yeah, me too.
Another thing I wanted to add was your YouTube channel, your blog.
All right,
So
yeah.
what made you like decide to do this blog? What was the,
Uh,
I'm gonna do the blog, I really want to do it?
it's really cringy. I
This is a
Oh my
safe space.
About I think 2.5 years ago, when I was doing masters, I had this phone call with my dad, and I was like, I hate this course. I don't want to do it. I'm gonna fail. I'm sick and tired of it. I'm doing this all for you guys. Like, why are you putting me through this and stuff? And then after that, I got off the phone, and he was very calm, and he was like, just do your best and blah blah blah, which is hilarious for an Asian family. I think he realized how much I was pissed. After that, I was like, oh, I'm such a stuck up brat for calling my dad to do that. Because that's not our kind of relationship in general anyway. So it was just a very intense moment. And then afterwards, I was like, you know what? I need to practice this appreciation thing better. So every night I would do a 3-minute vlog to myself about what I'd done well in the day, what I need to work on, and what I appreciate from that day. And from that moment, I realized that it's something that I should really be sharing, um, in terms of just not necessarily to influence anyone, but to show that I myself have all these very normal issues that everyone gets, and that we are not exception to the causes, and we are all in this together, and we should be able to understand that we can give ourselves a break because we are all trying in some form. And it's not been super successful because I think this is the hardest part, being super vulnerable on camera, in a video that you're happy enough that you feel aesthetically is nice, as well as posting it out to the world. And I think it's a good starting point, and it's good fun to do every now and again. Um, but that at the crux is really what the channel called Yellow Label is really about, being able to show a very personal side of everything that we do, both in photography and in design and in life, whether it's travel or work. We're all the same people at heart, and I guess not everyone gets to see that when they only know you from a certain side. So I think it's a huge thing, which could make a win or loss, but uh, how it goes in future, I guess it's just up to us to all see.
Well, I'm excited to see where it goes. I think it's great what you're doing. I think, like you were saying about being vulnerable on camera, it can be really hard to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
I think especially for guys in this culture that we're in right now, I see like a lot on Facebook of just like guys posting their pictures and with the copy of just like about the male suicides and things like
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
Like, I think the fact that you're able to be so vulnerable and talk about that on camera, I think
yeah.
is so like strong, and I
Mhm.
think that's gonna help a lot of the people that maybe watch it to also think, yeah, I can face this thing that I've been thinking about or that's been driving me nuts for like ages, and
Yeah.
just go and pursue it, or yeah, do what they need to do in order to sort it out. So yeah, it ain't cringy. I think it's
Thank
great.
you.
Just as some encouragement for you.
Uh-huh.
So that's one of the little projects that you do, and of course that you have your little collective with your friend as well, which is really
Mhm.
cool. What kind of projects have you been up to recently?
We were just right before all this kicked off, literally like 2 3 weeks ago. We were just out shooting with a local artist. So this is a young guy from Glasgow called T Kid, and I honestly think he will go so far. He's so incredibly talented, and he's a singer rapper, in Glasgow, and I think he's 19 now. We met him last year, um, and he's been doing gigs since, and he's phenomenal person, and he's super super nice. So we're just doing. I don't think he's released it, so I can't post anything, but he's releasing his next EP. So we're doing his album cover work for that. Um, and then we have actually been looking at trying to do some form of uh, charity work, a project based around being able to give back, and we've been trying to put this in motion for about a year, and we've just not quite found the right place, or I guess person to do it with. And we're still working through that. So that's been really the kind of like Achilles heel on our lives, because we haven't been able to put it right in the planning stage right now, and we're still looking to try and bring it together. So that's really been the main crux of my life for the past year. But we've had a couple of projects here and there. We just worked with Glasgow University Charity Fashion Show as well.
Oh, cool.
With Helmworks Films. It's our friend that owns a videography company, so he asked us to help him out with the filming, which isn't necessarily our specialty, but it's very good fun. And we're looking at finishing all the editing now so we can post it. So that's really the backlog of work that we've got going just now.
That's really cool. I have a few friends that took part in the show
Really?
with their collections, and I know two guys that are photographers as well that went along to the show too. So I was like, oh,
Oh,
that's quite
nice.
fun. Oh well, thank you very much for your time. I really
Thank you
appreciate
so
it,
much.
and it's been a really good time. Thoroughly enjoyed this a lot.
I'm glad it's a Saturday morning during quarantine, so I'm glad we're having a good time.
Been a rough time, tell me. Yeah, it's been really encouraging to hear your story, kind of your background as well, and just as well your views for the future. That you're just the fact that you want to do so much for better is like inspiring me to just try and push myself more into how I can do better. So thank you for that. I really
Thank you,
appreciate
and
it.
thank you for having this platform. I was super excited when you told me about it. I think it's really intuitively smart, even the name itself.
You
I
know
love
what? The name came about because I always say you do you. Like always say it. Like if someone's said like, oh yeah, and this person told me this, and I just felt really like ugh by it. I'm like, you know what, girl, you do you. Like you just do what you want to do because
Yeah.
you're the one to make the choices here.
Mhm.
And like it's just that you do you has just sat with me for so long, and I've wanted to do this for like for ages, for
Mhm.
years. I just have never had the like confidence one and the time to do it
Yeah.
until now. And I just was like, you know what, like this isn't going to start itself, like I just need to start it.
Mhm.
And even though it might be rubbish when I first start it, at least it's something that I can work on. So yeah, I've had so much like so many people coming to me and being like, oh, this is really cool idea, like love to take part. So I'm just like really excited that I think this has been needing to come, or something like this anyway, for a long time. And this 2020 seems to be the year of trying to be kind, you know, like, and I think it must have been a timing thing, that timing was like it just was meant to be done this year. So
Mhm.
yeah, no, I like I say, I'm super happy that you were keen to take part as well, and I think a lot of people are going to be super excited by this. So yeah.
Yeah, I will be sharing this. I'm very excited for you. I'm very happy for you as well. And it's so
Oh,
well
thank you.
prepared, like the questions and everything. So
The questions were, I was thinking like, if, well, I mean, I am already talking to you anyway, but I was like, if I was like there in person and I'm with that person chatting to them, what would I want to ask them? What would I want to know from them if I was going into their profession and like needed some tips and things to like get myself to where they are? Because like where they are is like where I want to be in the future maybe. So like if I can learn kind of from their mistakes or like things that they've learned, then that like can help you progress to where you want to be. So that's what this platform is,
yeah,
just to like help people get to where they want to be and just embrace themselves and
yeah,
let them do them.
yeah. Let them do them.
Them be them, you do you. Yeah, so that's where it all came about. But yeah,
It's amazing. I really like it. Really, really like it.
cool, I appreciate that, thanks. Well, I will leave you to enjoy the rest of your Saturday. And
Thank you.
do you have much planned, or are you just chilling?
We are editing today.
Oh, so busy one.
Yeah, and I'll have to. So we've been going out for like daily runs, and they've closed off one of our routes. So now we need to find a new one. So I'll be doing that today at some point. It's really sad.
Cool.
Well,
Well,
it's for a hospital, but like I guess like
you need to do what you need to do. So
yeah,
it's
yeah, you
fair
do
enough.
you.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, thank you again for your time and for answering these questions. Like the way that I word things is just a bit bad sometimes. So
No, it was
I
perfect. That
applaud
was
you
great.
for the way that you managed to answer the questions because I was thinking, does this make sense? So yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward
Pleasure,
to doing this.
pleasure. Hey guys, a massive thank you for listening to You Do You podcast. We do videos and podcasts as well, so I really hope you enjoyed this one. It was great fun to edit and record as well. And stay tuned for more creatives coming soon.